In a small craft market in southwest Virginia, you'll find a woman whose roots to early Americana can't be ignored. Just walk in and you'll see about every color and texture of yarn you will ever need. Yarn that was not shipped in, but has been produced right here by Leslie Shelor with her 18th century spinning wheel.
This is called a walking wheel. This is the traditional wheel that you would have most seen in the area when my folks settled here. Although the first European settlers brought over the smaller wheel, which is called a table wheel or a Saxony wheel that's used with flax. They would have brought that in from Europe, but as those wheels in the more remote areas fell into disrepair, they switched back to this one because they had wheelwrights and they had blacksmiths to make these parts, but they didn't have the knowledge to make the more complicated Saxony wheel. The advantage of this wheel is it works really well with wool. The disadvantage is you have to stay on your feet the entire time. You can't sit down and spin. They call it a walking wheel or a wool wheel, a walking wheel, because you walk about 3 steps backwards as you're drafting, which is what this process is called. And then after you get it spun out as much as you can as far as you can reach, you change the angle and wind it back on. So this is a slower process. The flyer wheel will put the wool on at the same time that you're spinning. But the wheel does a lot of the work. All I basically do is feed the fiber into the twist. This is what's called a simple machine, and it's producing energy that falls down into the fiber as a twist. I come from a long line of crafters. My grandmother was a quilter. My great-grandmother was a hand spinner, or both my great-grandmothers actually. My grandmother remembered carding the wool for her mother every day. She'd have to card a certain amount before she could go outside to play, even when she was 3 and 4 years old. That lasted into the 30s, and then it kind of faded out. But I've always been interested in handcrafts. I did a lot of things when I was a child. A high school student taught me to crochet when I was 8. And then eventually I fell into the hand spinning because my mother gave me her grandmother's spinning wheel. And I learned to spin on it. And then it just kind of took over my life.
Spinning is more than a hobby to Leslie Shelor. She spends countless hours at the wheel and produces some crafted items that originate in the wools of local sheep and alpacas.
This is how I make my living. I've had a shop in Meadows of Dan for 9 years in different incarnations. But I've been, getting by with hand spinning for the last 9 years. I have about 6 or 8 spinners that I represent in Northwest North Carolina and Southwest Virginia in my shop. I also sell the fibers that some of the farmers produce as well for spinning and felting. This is fiber. This particular fiber is a wool. It's from a breed of sheep called Romney. I get all of my fiber from local farmers. This particular one came from a farm in Tazewell. We have some alpaca. We have several different breeds of sheep, but we do our best to keep all of our fibers in Southwest Virginia or Northwest North Carolina. And that's our idea, is to support our local farmers as much as we can. Okay, this is sheep's wool. It's called Romney. What I did before I got ready to spin, I carded it. I use a pen brush, basically, called a hand card. You put it on the fiber onto the card, and then you brush it. What this does is introduce air into the fiber and align all the little strands, and it also takes any kind of straw or hay, because animals are animals, and so they get hay in their wool. And then after that's done, I have a little bundle called a rolag. And that's what I spin from. It all started with a stick, basically. This is called a spindle here. All spinning depends on that spindle. So I feel like probably, a long time ago, some woman was sitting on the side of a creek bank, and she picked up some fiber and started playing with it, and realized that she could twist it into something useful. And she used a stick to make it easier to twist it. Eventually she added a hook to the stick, and then eventually she added a weight to make a spindle, a drop spindle, and then it just went on from there. But even if you go into a modern spinning textile mill, you'll still see that spindle. It's still the thing that makes it all work.
Located right on the Blue Ridge Parkway, Meadows of Dan is nestled among picturesque mountains and rolling countryside. It has a history of self-sufficient folks that hold to the traditions of the families that settled here almost 200 years ago.
Meadows of Dan was first settled in the 1820s. I have a friend that calls us a backwater, or the way the migration came into Southwest Virginia from the north mainly. People settled into this area in the 1820s, 1830s, and then they kind of just never got exposed to the outside for a long time. The Civil War did affect the area somewhat, but the really first changes that we saw was when the city of Danville came in and put a dam in for a hydroelectric plant, and then the Blue Ridge Parkway came in, and that changed things tremendously. So we still kept a lot of our traditions, though. My grandparents were subsistence farmers. My grandfather did have a day job, or a public work job, as he called it. But they raised all their own food up into the 70s. And we kind of stick to those traditions. There's a lot of, if you can see, there's a lot of handcrafters in the immediate area. There's still people that put up their own food and preserves. And gardening is getting more and more popular because people are worried about where their food's coming from.
Along with the basics of spinning, there are some techniques and some nomenclature that must be learned. It's not exactly high-tech, but there are several new terms and descriptions to learn if you want to start spinning your own yarns.
Wool has little tiny scales, and it naturally wants to tangle up. So when I finish up one rolag and want to start another, I just get a little extra twist in, and then I lay the fiber together, stretch it out a bit, and it's as if you never even stopped. After I fill this up, this is called building a cop. This will be a big cone of yarn. After I fill it, I'll take it off and I'll spin another one. Then I spin the two together. That's called plying. And after it's plied, it makes a yarn that we can knit or weave or crochet or felt or do all kinds of things with.
Leslie's craft shop is full of interesting surprises, from handbags to sweaters to toys for kids and pets. You'll find crafts in every corner.
We have several people that work at Virginia Tech as professors, and they have wool as a sideline, but I do know 3 or 4 women that actually that's all they do, and that's how they support their families, is with alpacas or sheep's wool. It's a hard life, but we kind of tend to live simple lives in this area. I think everybody has a story. Stories and music are so important to the people in the mountains of Southwest Virginia. You'll meet somebody and they'll say, "What's your story?" And they want to know where you belong and who you're related to and what your place is in the society. But everybody used to have a spinning wheel in everybody was a spinner. A lot of times, all the girls in a family would spin, and the mother would be the weaver. It takes about 7 to 9 hours of spinning for a weaver to weave for 1 hour. So all the girls had to learn how to spin. If there was a girl that didn't get married and stayed at home, and she would continue spinning, and she would be called a spinster. And I love the 21st century. I mean, I love my computer and my cell phone, and I kind of like being in the best of both worlds. I think it is valuable for young people to learn things like this, if for nothing else, the relaxation that it provides to have something to do with your hands. We have such a stressful world.
Fall is the height of tourist season in Meadows of Dan, but whatever time you come to this magical place, you'll leave feeling just a bit more enriched with the valuable knowledge that comes from visiting this small country craft shop. From Patrick County, this is Dave Miller.